The room went silent the moment the screenshots hit the table. You could feel it, the kind of tension that makes everyone hold their breath at the same time. Fans thought they'd seen every possible feud play out on reality TV, but this was different. This was personal, and at the center of it all stood Bambi, eyes blazing, voice steady, doing what no one expected, dragging Kirk Frost right in front of his wife, Rasheeda. What started as whispers backstage exploded into a full-blown showdown that fans are already calling one of the messiest moments in reality TV history. According to those in the room, emotions ran high as Bambi leaned forward, phone in hand, and calmly said the words that changed everything. "Since we're all here, let's stop pretending." That's when the screenshots, messages allegedly sent late at night, reactions that didn't add up, timelines that didn't match, were revealed, one by one, like plot twists nobody was ready for. Rasheeda's face reportedly froze, the smile she walked in with disappearing in real time. Kirk? Sources say he shifted in his seat, suddenly quiet, suddenly defensive. Fans are shocked because this wasn't a random argument or a playful read, it was a calculated confrontation, staged in the most explosive way possible. The energy in the room crackled as friends, castmates, and cameras struggled to keep up with the chaos unfolding. "Say it with your chest," Bambi allegedly snapped, her voice echoing as she scrolled. Each swipe felt like another bomb dropping, and with every reveal, the family was left divided. Some cast members looked away, others leaned in closer, knowing they were witnessing reality TV history. This wasn't just about loyalty, it was about respect, betrayal, and receipts that refused to stay hidden. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. Insiders claim Rasheeda wasn't just shocked, she was furious. Furious at the timing, furious at the setting, furious that Bambi chose this moment to air it all out. But was Bambi wrong, or was she just tired of staying quiet? As voices rose and alliances shifted, one thing became clear: nothing would be the same after this. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear isn't just another rumor. It's a dramatic unraveling filled with confrontations, denials, and moments that left even longtime fans stunned. The question everyone's asking now? Who's telling the truth, and who just got exposed? The air was still thick from the moment before, like nobody had exhaled yet. Bambi didn't rush. She let the silence sit, stretch, and suffocate the room. Every second felt louder than the last. Rasheeda's eyes stayed locked on the phone in Bambi's hand, while Kirk stared straight ahead, jaw tight, hands clasped together like he was praying this would all disappear if he didn't move. Bambi finally broke the quiet with a slow laugh, the kind that didn't carry humor but warning. She said she never wanted it to go this far, but people kept playing in her face. She reminded everyone how many times she stayed quiet, how many times she let rumors slide because she didn't want drama. But tonight, she said, was about truth. Her truth. And once she started, there was no rewinding it. She tapped the screen and turned the phone so everyone could see. Not rushing, not shaking. Calm. Deadly calm. The first screenshot popped up, and murmurs rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," under their breath. Rasheeda leaned forward slightly, her expression unreadable but tense, like she already knew what she was about to see and still wasn't ready. Bambi said the date out loud. Then the time. She pointed out where Kirk said he was that night. She repeated his excuse word for word, her voice mocking but controlled. Then she read the message on the screen, slowly, making sure every syllable landed. The room reacted before Rasheeda did. Chairs shifted. Someone sucked their teeth. Kirk finally spoke, saying that wasn't what it looked like, that messages get taken out of context all the time. Bambi didn't even look at him. She said context doesn't change timestamps. She said context doesn't change emojis sent at 2 in the morning. She said context doesn't explain why the same energy kept showing up every time Rasheeda was out of town. That's when Rasheeda finally snapped her head toward Kirk, her voice sharp as glass when she asked him if that part was true. Kirk hesitated, and that hesitation was louder than any confession. Bambi smiled at that moment, not out of joy, but out of confirmation. She said that pause told her everything she needed to know. Rasheeda crossed her arms, leaning back, eyes never leaving her husband. She told him to answer the question. No jokes, no deflection, just yes or no. Instead of answering, Kirk accused Bambi of doing this for attention. He said she was bitter, that she always wanted camera time, that this was another storyline she was trying to force. The room reacted instantly. Voices overlapped. Someone told him that was weak. Another castmate told him to stop deflecting. Bambi's smile disappeared, replaced by a cold stare that made even the loudest people quiet down. She said she didn't need attention. She said she had receipts. And that's when she dropped the second screenshot. This one hit harder. It wasn't flirty. It was familiar. Too familiar. Inside jokes. Pet names. The kind of language that doesn't come from strangers. Rasheeda's face shifted, her lips pressing together as she read. Her hand trembled just slightly before she caught herself. Bambi said she warned him privately. She said she reached out woman to man, respectfully, and asked him to chill. She said she never planned to bring this to the group, but once she realized she was being painted as crazy behind the scenes, she decided to let the truth speak for itself. She asked Rasheeda if she remembered a certain argument from months ago, one that never made sense at the time. Rasheeda nodded slowly, like a memory was rearranging itself in her mind. She said she remembered feeling like something was off but never having proof. Kirk jumped in, saying that argument had nothing to do with Bambi. He said Rasheeda was reaching. Bambi cut him off instantly, telling him not to speak for her. She said he'd done enough of that already. The tension escalated fast. Rasheeda stood up, pacing now, emotions clearly boiling over. She said she hated being embarrassed like this. She said she hated finding out in front of everybody. Bambi responded that she didn't choose the setting, she chose the timing. She said lies had a way of growing when they stayed in the dark. Fans watching later would say this was the moment everything shifted. A friend tried to step in, suggesting they take a break, but Rasheeda waved them off. She said she wanted it all out. Right now. She asked Bambi if there was more. Bambi didn't hesitate. She said yes. And the way she said it made Kirk finally lose his composure. He stood up, voice raised, accusing Bambi of disrespecting his marriage. That's when Bambi fired back that respect is earned, not demanded. She said marriage doesn't give someone immunity. She said if he wanted his marriage protected, he should have protected it himself. The room erupted again, people shouting over each other, but Rasheeda stayed quiet, absorbing every word, every reaction, every uncomfortable truth falling into place. Bambi explained how this all started small. A compliment here, a check-in there. She said she brushed it off at first, thinking it was harmless. But then it kept happening. She said boundaries were crossed slowly, intentionally. She said she felt uncomfortable, and when she tried to pull away, the narrative changed. Suddenly she was dramatic. Suddenly she was imagining things. Rasheeda stopped pacing and faced Kirk again, asking him if Bambi was lying. Kirk said Bambi misunderstood him. He said he was just being friendly. Bambi laughed again, this time louder, sharper. She said friendly doesn't delete messages. Friendly doesn't switch platforms. Friendly doesn't ask someone not to tell their spouse. That line hit like a punch. Rasheeda's eyes widened, and she asked Kirk what Bambi meant by that. Kirk opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence that followed was brutal. Bambi showed the next screenshot, the one where Kirk allegedly asked her to keep things between them to avoid drama. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Rasheeda sat back down slowly, like her legs suddenly couldn't hold her. She said she felt stupid. She said she defended him so many times. She said she went to war for him, publicly and privately. Kirk tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled away. That small gesture spoke volumes. Bambi softened her tone then, saying she never wanted to hurt Rasheeda. She said her issue was never with her. She said she admired her strength, her loyalty. She said that's why she waited so long. But waiting only made it worse. Fans would later say this moment split the room emotionally, with sympathy and shock colliding at once. Someone asked why Bambi didn't expose this sooner. She answered honestly. She said she was scared. Scared of backlash. Scared of being blamed. Scared of becoming the villain in someone else's story. She said women always pay the price first. Rasheeda nodded faintly, tears welling but not falling yet. Kirk finally admitted he messed up. Not fully, not cleanly, but enough. He said he crossed lines emotionally. He said he didn't think it would turn into this. Bambi asked him if that was supposed to make it better. She asked if emotional betrayal hurt less than physical. Nobody answered because nobody could. The energy shifted again, heavier now. No yelling, no interruptions, just the weight of truth sitting in the room. Rasheeda wiped her face and said she needed air. As she stood up, she looked at Bambi and said she appreciated her honesty, even if it hurt. Bambi nodded, understanding written all over her face. As Rasheeda walked away, Kirk stood frozen, caught between following his wife or defending himself further. The room buzzed with whispered reactions. Some people felt vindicated for doubting him. Others felt sick watching a marriage crack in real time. Bambi stayed seated, staring at her phone like it held both justice and regret. And just when everyone thought the worst had already come out, Bambi looked up and said there was one more thing. Her voice was quieter now, but somehow more dangerous. She said this wasn't the only situation. She said patterns don't exist in isolation. And with that, every head in the room snapped back toward her, realizing this story was far from over. The room shifted the moment Bambi said there was more. It wasn't loud anymore, it was heavier. The kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable because they know something ugly is about to surface. Kirk finally moved, running his hands over his head like he was trying to physically push the moment away. He told Bambi to stop, said this didn't need to go any further. Bambi replied calmly that it already had. She said when patterns repeat, they stop being mistakes. She said she wasn't the first woman to notice the behavior, just the first one brave enough to say it out loud with proof. That's when murmurs started again. Someone asked what she meant. Another castmate whispered Kirk's name like a warning. Bambi leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and said she had conversations saved that went back years. Kirk snapped, saying she was lying now, reaching. He said she was trying to rewrite history. Bambi shook her head and said history writes itself when people keep receipts. She scrolled again, slower this time, almost letting the anticipation torture everyone in the room. She said these weren't messages between her and Kirk, but messages Kirk sent other women that eventually found their way to her. That's when someone gasped. Not a whisper this time, but a sharp intake of breath that cut through the room. Bambi explained how women talk. How they compare notes quietly before anything ever goes public. She said that's how she realized it wasn't about her specifically. It was about access, opportunity, ego. She read one message aloud, changing the name but keeping the words. The tone was unmistakable, charming, calculated, familiar. Kirk shouted for her to stop reading private messages that didn't involve her. Bambi replied that the moment he involved her, it became her business. She said secrecy protects behavior, not people. Meanwhile, Rasheeda was outside, leaning against a wall, breathing like she was trying not to break apart. A friend followed her, asking if she was okay. Rasheeda said she didn't know. She said she felt blindsided and stupid and angry all at once. She said the worst part wasn't even the messages, it was realizing how many times she defended him against rumors that were apparently true. Back inside, Kirk tried to regain control. He told the group this was being exaggerated, that people were twisting things to make him look bad. One castmate asked him directly why so many women had similar stories. Kirk said people lie for attention. Bambi snapped back that attention fades, but screenshots don't. She explained how one woman reached out to her crying, saying Kirk made her feel special and disposable at the same time. Bambi said that stuck with her. She said she recognized the pattern immediately. The late-night messages, the emotional venting, the subtle disrespect masked as concern. She said it was manipulation dressed up as kindness. The group was divided now. Some people felt uncomfortable that Bambi was airing out stories that weren't hers. Others felt like this was long overdue. One person said Kirk was being exposed in real time. Kirk accused Bambi of trying to destroy his family. She responded that families are destroyed by choices, not exposure. Rasheeda returned quietly, standing near the doorway, listening without announcing herself. When she heard Bambi describe another situation that mirrored arguments she'd had with Kirk, her face tightened. She stepped forward and asked Bambi to repeat the timeline. Bambi did, carefully, making sure every detail lined up. Rasheeda closed her eyes briefly, like puzzle pieces were locking into place. She asked Kirk why he always accused her of being paranoid. Kirk stammered, saying she was overthinking. Rasheeda snapped back that her instincts were right. She said women know. She said she knew something was wrong long before tonight. Kirk tried to apologize, saying he never meant to hurt her. Rasheeda replied that intention doesn't erase impact. Emotions ran high again, but this time it wasn't chaotic. It was raw. Rasheeda asked Bambi if anything physical ever happened. Bambi answered honestly, saying not with her. She said she shut it down before it crossed that line. But she couldn't speak for anyone else. That uncertainty hung in the air like smoke. Kirk took that moment to claim innocence, saying see, nothing happened. Bambi shut that down immediately, saying fidelity isn't just physical. She said trust is about boundaries. She said once those are crossed, damage is done. Rasheeda nodded slowly, tears finally falling now, no longer trying to hold them back. A producer suggested they pause filming, but Rasheeda refused. She said she wanted everything documented. She said she wasn't going to protect anyone anymore. That statement alone sent shockwaves through the room. Kirk looked stunned, like he'd just realized how badly he'd miscalculated. Bambi said she didn't want to be the villain in this story. She said she already knew fans would blame her. She said women always get blamed for men's behavior. She said she was prepared for that. She just wasn't prepared to keep lying for someone else's comfort. Rasheeda thanked her quietly. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was sincere. She said she wished she had known sooner, but she respected the courage it took to speak up. Kirk tried to interrupt, but Rasheeda shut him down instantly, telling him she wasn't ready to hear excuses. The group started breaking into smaller conversations, everyone processing what they'd just witnessed. Some people checked their phones, already seeing messages from fans reacting in real time. Others sat silently, knowing this moment would follow them long after filming ended. Bambi gathered her things, standing slowly. She said what she needed to say. She said whatever happened next wasn't in her control. Before leaving, she looked at Kirk one last time and said accountability feels like an attack when you're used to getting away with things. As she walked out, whispers followed her. Some calling her brave, others calling her messy, but nobody could deny the impact. Rasheeda remained seated, staring at the floor, while Kirk hovered nearby, unsure whether to approach or retreat. And just when it seemed like the confrontation had reached its peak, a phone buzzed loudly on the table. Everyone looked down. A new message preview flashed on the screen, a name no one expected to see connected to Kirk. Rasheeda noticed it too. She looked up slowly, her voice barely above a whisper, and asked, "Who is that?" The buzzing phone felt louder than any shout that had come before it. Nobody moved at first. The vibration stopped, then started again, like the message was demanding attention. Kirk lunged for the phone too late. Rasheeda picked it up before he could reach it, her hands steady in a way that surprised even her. She read the name out loud. Slowly, deliberately. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't random. It was someone connected to them, someone who had been around their circle for years. The room collectively froze. Kirk's face drained of color, his mouth opening but no words coming out. That silence confirmed more than any screenshot ever could. Rasheeda asked him why that person was messaging him right now, after everything that had just been exposed. Kirk said it was nothing, just bad timing. Rasheeda laughed, a sharp broken sound that carried more pain than humor. She said bad timing doesn't exist when patterns keep repeating. She unlocked the phone and read the preview message quietly to herself. Her expression shifted again, this time into something harder. Colder. She asked Kirk if he wanted to explain why the message said "miss you." Kirk snapped, saying she was invading his privacy. Rasheeda replied that privacy ended the moment trust did. Emotions ran high again, but this time Rasheeda wasn't shaking. She was clear. She handed the phone to Bambi and asked her to read it. Bambi hesitated, saying she didn't want to cross another line. Rasheeda insisted. She said if she was going to face the truth, she wanted all of it. Bambi read the message out loud, every word echoing through the room like a confession. Kirk exploded, shouting that this was unfair, that he was being ambushed. Bambi calmly replied that ambushes are unexpected, and this was long overdue. Someone else chimed in, saying Kirk had plenty of chances to come clean. Kirk accused the group of turning on him. Rasheeda said they weren't turning, they were finally seeing. She asked him how long. Kirk tried to dodge, but Rasheeda pressed harder. She said she deserved the truth. After a long pause, he admitted it had been going on off and on for years. Not physical, he claimed, but emotional. That word felt hollow now. Rasheeda told him emotional betrayal cuts deeper because it's intentional. The room buzzed again, but quieter this time, like everyone was afraid to disturb what was happening. Rasheeda stood up, looking taller somehow, stronger. She said she gave him loyalty, protection, a public shield. She said she defended him when fans dragged her for staying. She asked him what she got in return. Kirk said he loved her. Rasheeda replied that love without respect is manipulation. That line hit hard. Someone whispered that she ate him up. Kirk tried to apologize again, saying he didn't know how to stop once it started. Rasheeda told him that was his problem, not hers. Bambi stayed silent, watching Rasheeda take control of the moment. Fans watching later would say this was the turning point, the moment Rasheeda stopped reacting and started deciding. She told Kirk she needed space. Real space. Not a night, not a week. She said she needed to reevaluate everything. Kirk panicked, asking what that meant. Rasheeda said it meant consequences. She said she wasn't going to pretend anymore for the sake of an image. That statement sent a ripple through the group. Everyone knew what that could mean publicly, financially, emotionally. One castmate asked Rasheeda if she wanted support. She nodded, thanking them. Kirk tried to follow Rasheeda as she walked toward another room, but she stopped him with a raised hand. She told him not right now. The rejection was quiet but devastating. Left behind, Kirk lashed out, blaming Bambi again. He said she could have handled this privately. Bambi turned to him and said she tried. She said private conversations didn't change anything. Exposure did. Kirk called her bitter. She replied that bitterness comes from swallowing truth, not speaking it. Outside, Rasheeda sat alone, staring at her reflection in a dark window. She said she felt foolish for ignoring signs. A friend reminded her that trusting your husband isn't foolish. Kirk breaking that trust was the issue. Rasheeda wiped her eyes and said she wasn't sure who she was without constantly defending him. Inside, producers debated whether to keep filming. The tension was raw, real, and impossible to fake. Kirk paced, muttering that everything was falling apart. One person told him accountability feels like punishment when you're used to grace. Bambi prepared to leave again, saying she didn't regret telling the truth, but she regretted the pain it caused. Before exiting, she said one last thing. She said this culture protects men and crucifies women. She said tonight was different. And with that, she walked out. Rasheeda eventually returned, her face composed but distant. She said she would continue filming, but on her terms. She said she wasn't ready to make decisions yet, but she wasn't going to silence herself anymore. Fans would later call this her rebirth moment. Kirk tried one last time to plead, saying he'd do anything to fix it. Rasheeda replied that fixing something requires honesty from the start, not damage control at the end. She told him she needed actions, not words. And until then, she was choosing herself. The night ended without resolution, but with lines clearly drawn. Alliances shifted. Perceptions changed. Messages flooded social media as fans reacted in real time, shocked, divided, emotional. Some blamed Bambi. Others praised her. Many stood with Rasheeda, calling her strength inspiring. As cameras finally shut down, one thing was clear. This wasn't just another argument. It was a reckoning, and the fallout had only just begun. Morning came with no relief. The tension from the night before clung to everything like humidity, heavy and unavoidable. Word had already spread before anyone even checked their phones. Group chats were on fire. Fans were shocked. Blogs were already speculating, exaggerating, dissecting every moment that had leaked. Rasheeda woke up feeling exposed, like her pain had become public property overnight. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone, scrolling through messages she wasn't ready to answer. Some were supportive, others were cruel. A few asked the same question over and over again, why did you stay? That question burned the most. Kirk hadn't slept. He paced the house all night, rehearsing apologies that sounded hollow even to himself. When Rasheeda finally walked into the kitchen, Kirk tried to speak. She didn't stop him with words. She stopped him with silence. She poured coffee, sat down, and said she needed honesty without excuses. Kirk nodded quickly, saying he understood. Then he immediately started explaining. Rasheeda cut him off, saying that's not honesty, that's deflection. She asked him if there was anything else she didn't know. Kirk hesitated again. That pause came back like a ghost. Rasheeda leaned back and said she wasn't going to beg for truth. She said if he wanted to save anything, this was the moment. Kirk finally admitted there were more messages, more conversations she never saw. He swore nothing physical happened. Rasheeda said that line no longer mattered. She told him trust isn't measured by what didn't happen, but by what almost did. Kirk looked defeated, but Rasheeda didn't soften. She said she needed space, real space. She said she was staying elsewhere for a while. Kirk panicked, asking how long. Rasheeda replied that she didn't know, and that scared him more than any argument. Meanwhile, Bambi woke up to chaos of a different kind. Her phone was exploding with notifications. Some fans were calling her brave. Others were calling her everything but her name. She expected it. She said the truth always comes with a price, especially for women. She avoided social media, knowing anything she said would be twisted. A mutual friend reached out, asking if she was okay. Bambi said she was exhausted but at peace. She said holding on to secrets felt heavier than letting them go. She also admitted she feared retaliation, not just from Kirk, but from public opinion. History had taught her how quickly narratives flip. Producers reached out to both women, sensing the magnitude of what they had captured. They wanted follow-up scenes, reactions, sit-downs. Rasheeda agreed reluctantly. She said if her pain was going to be used, it would be on her terms. She refused to film with Kirk for now. That decision alone sent another wave through the cast. When filming resumed, the group dynamic felt fractured. Conversations stopped when certain people entered the room. Sides were being silently chosen. Some felt Bambi went too far. Others felt Kirk had been protected for too long. Fans watching later would say this season felt darker, heavier, more real than ever before. Rasheeda sat down with a close friend on camera, finally allowing herself to cry. She said she felt embarrassed, not because of what happened, but because the world was watching her process it. She said she hated that people thought strength meant silence. She said she was tired of carrying everything alone. Her friend reminded her that strength also means knowing when to walk away. Rasheeda said she wasn't ready to decide yet. She said she needed clarity, not pressure. Kirk tried reaching out again, sending long messages filled with apologies and promises. Rasheeda read them but didn't respond. Bambi filmed her own scene days later, addressing the backlash without directly addressing anyone. She said telling the truth doesn't make you cruel. She said protecting lies makes you complicit. She admitted she never wanted to be part of someone else's marital issues. She just refused to be painted as a liar anymore. The cast reacted publicly, choosing words carefully. Some expressed support for Rasheeda. Others stayed neutral. Kirk went quiet on social media, which only fueled speculation. Fans dissected his silence, reading guilt into every absence. Behind closed doors, Kirk tried therapy. Not because he fully understood the damage, but because he was afraid of losing everything. Rasheeda noticed the effort but remained guarded. She said accountability isn't a phase, it's consistency. One evening, Rasheeda agreed to meet Kirk in a neutral space, cameras present but distant. She laid out boundaries clearly. No minimizing, no blaming Bambi, no rewriting history. Kirk listened, nodding, but his eyes betrayed frustration. He wanted forgiveness without fully earning it. She told him she needed time to see if change was real. She said love doesn't erase patterns. Kirk asked if she still loved him. Rasheeda paused, then said love doesn't disappear overnight, but trust can. That answer haunted him. As episodes aired, fan reactions intensified. Some fans demanded Rasheeda leave. Others begged her to stay and rebuild. Bambi remained mostly silent, watching the discourse unfold. She said watching people argue about her intentions was surreal. She said intentions don't matter when truth is inconvenient. The pressure mounted. Cast members whispered that the reunion would be explosive. Unresolved feelings, unasked questions, and raw wounds were all headed toward one stage. Rasheeda knew she couldn't avoid it forever. Kirk feared it. Bambi prepared for it. And as the reunion date approached, new rumors started circulating online. Anonymous messages, leaked screenshots from unknown sources, stories that suggested the situation was even deeper than anyone realized. Rasheeda saw them and felt that familiar sinking feeling again. She called Bambi for the first time since the confrontation. The conversation was short but honest. Rasheeda asked her if there was anything else she should brace for. Bambi went quiet, then she said she hoped not. But hope, she admitted, had already failed them once. The call ended without reassurance. Just shared understanding. And as the cameras prepared to roll again, one thing was certain. Whatever came next would either break everything completely or force truths no one was ready to face. The reunion stage felt colder than usual, like the lights were bright but offered no warmth. Rasheeda sat composed, legs crossed, face calm, but the tension lived in her shoulders. Kirk sat a few seats away, hands folded, eyes darting toward her and then away again. Bambi was placed across from him, posture straight, expression unreadable. The audience could feel it before a single word was spoken. This wasn't entertainment, this was unfinished business. The host opened with a recap, replaying clips that already felt heavier now that time had passed. Gasps echoed as screenshots flashed on the screen again. Fans watching at home were stunned all over again. When the footage ended, silence hung thick in the air. The host asked Rasheeda how she was holding up. She took a breath and said she was surviving, not healing yet. She explained that watching it back reopened wounds. She said it wasn't just what Kirk did, it was realizing how long she ignored her own instincts. She said she'd been conditioned to protect her marriage at all costs, even when it cost her peace. Emotions ran high, but her voice stayed steady. The host turned to Kirk and asked if he understood the damage now. Kirk said he did. He said seeing it back forced him to confront himself. Bambi shifted slightly in her seat, not reacting, not interrupting. Kirk apologized publicly, saying he disrespected his wife and the marriage. The apology sounded practiced. Fans would later debate whether it was sincere or strategic. Rasheeda listened without expression. When asked if she accepted the apology, she said acceptance didn't mean forgiveness. She said forgiveness comes after accountability shows up consistently, not just on a stage. The audience murmured in agreement. The host then addressed Bambi, asking how it felt being blamed by some fans. Bambi responded calmly, saying she expected it. She said society is quick to punish women who expose uncomfortable truths. She said she never claimed to be perfect, only honest. That honesty cost her peace too. A castmate jumped in, accusing Bambi of enjoying the chaos. Bambi replied that chaos already existed, she just stopped pretending it didn't. Kirk tried to interject, saying Bambi didn't have to expose everything publicly. Rasheeda cut him off immediately, telling him not to shift blame again. The room reacted loudly. The host asked about the new rumors circulating online. Rasheeda stiffened. Bambi looked down briefly. Kirk denied knowing anything about them. The host pressed, revealing that more screenshots had surfaced, allegedly from another woman, dated after the confrontation. Gasps erupted. Rasheeda turned toward Kirk slowly, asking him if there was anything else he needed to tell her. Kirk panicked, insisting the screenshots were fake. Bambi spoke up then, saying she'd seen them too. She said she couldn't verify everything, but the language looked familiar. That comment alone cracked something open. Rasheeda shook her head, disappointed more than angry now. She said the worst part wasn't the betrayal anymore, it was the dishonesty after being caught. She said she felt like she was constantly being asked to accept half-truths. Kirk pleaded, saying he was overwhelmed. Rasheeda replied that consequences can feel overwhelming when you've avoided them for too long. The host asked the question everyone feared. Were they still together? Rasheeda paused, then said they were separated. The audience erupted. Kirk looked stunned, like he expected a different answer. Rasheeda explained she chose herself. She said she needed to rediscover who she was outside of constant defense mode. Kirk tried to reach for her hand again. She moved it away gently but firmly. That small action said more than any speech. Bambi watched quietly, eyes soft, not triumphant. Fans would later note that she didn't smile once during that moment. The reunion continued with tense exchanges, but the damage was done. Kirk admitted he struggled with validation. He admitted he liked the attention. Rasheeda said liking attention isn't an excuse for disrespect. Bambi added that unhealed insecurities don't disappear just because someone is married. As the reunion wrapped, the host asked each of them what they'd learned. Bambi said she learned silence protects the wrong people. Kirk said he learned he took loyalty for granted. Rasheeda said she learned that love should never require self-betrayal. Backstage, emotions finally spilled over. Rasheeda cried privately, away from cameras. Bambi checked on her briefly, the exchange quiet and sincere. No bitterness, just shared understanding. Kirk stood alone, watching staff move around him, realizing how isolated accountability can feel. When the episode aired, the reaction was explosive. Social media split into camps. Some dragged Bambi, others apologized to her publicly. Many rallied behind Rasheeda, praising her strength. Kirk became a trending topic for all the wrong reasons. Brands paused partnerships. Interviews were requested. Rasheeda declined most of them. She said she wasn't ready to monetize her pain. Bambi accepted one, carefully choosing her words. She said truth doesn't need defending forever. Behind the scenes, Rasheeda started therapy seriously. She said healing wasn't linear. Some days she missed Kirk. Other days she felt free. Kirk attempted grand gestures, but Rasheeda wasn't moved. She said consistency mattered more than apologies. Time passed, but the story didn't fade. It evolved. Fans speculated about reconciliation. Others demanded accountability. Bambi stayed focused on her own life, refusing to be dragged back into the narrative. And just when the public thought the dust was settling, Rasheeda posted a cryptic message online. One sentence. No names. Just clarity. It said growth requires letting go of who hurt you, even when you love them. That post sent shockwaves again. Kirk saw it and finally understood. This wasn't a pause. This was a shift. And as the season closed, one truth stood firm. Some confrontations don't end relationships. They end illusions. The fallout didn't end with the reunion. If anything, that was just the beginning of a quieter, more painful chapter that played out off camera. Weeks passed, and Rasheeda settled into a new routine, one that didn't revolve around managing someone else's damage. She woke up earlier. She spent more time alone. She said the silence felt strange at first, like withdrawal, but eventually it started to feel like peace. Kirk struggled in ways he never admitted publicly. The noise was gone. No one was defending him. No one was spinning narratives for him. He tried to distract himself with work, but everything felt hollow. He replayed conversations in his head, especially the moments where Rasheeda asked for honesty and he gave her half answers instead. Regret sat heavy, but it didn't automatically turn into growth. Fans kept watching closely. Every post, every absence, every subtle change. Rasheeda stopped wearing her ring. That alone sent the internet into a frenzy. People analyzed photos like detectives, looking for clues. Bambi noticed it all from a distance. She stayed intentionally quiet, refusing to insert herself where she didn't belong anymore. Behind closed doors, Rasheeda and Kirk had difficult conversations without cameras. Some ended calmly, others ended in frustration. Rasheeda said she needed to see effort without fear driving it. Kirk admitted he didn't know who he was without validation from outside sources. That honesty came late, but it came. Bambi faced her own reckoning. The backlash didn't fully fade. She lost friendships she thought were solid. She gained unexpected allies. She said the hardest part was realizing how many people preferred comfort over truth. She questioned herself at times, wondering if staying silent would have been easier. But every time she doubted, she remembered Rasheeda's face when the truth finally made sense. One night, Rasheeda invited Bambi over. No cameras, no audience, just two women sitting across from each other, sharing what the world never saw. Rasheeda thanked her again, not for the exposure, but for the honesty. She said living in confusion was worse than living in pain. Bambi told her she admired her strength. They didn't become close friends, but something mutual formed. Respect. Kirk found out about the meeting later and felt a sting of jealousy, then shame. He realized the two women he hurt most had found clarity without him. That realization forced him to confront the depth of the damage. He started therapy again, this time consistently. Not to save the marriage, but to understand himself. Months passed. The noise softened. Rasheeda began to smile more genuinely. She traveled. She reconnected with parts of herself she had neglected. Fans noticed the shift and commented on it constantly. Some rooted for reconciliation. Others rooted for independence. Rasheeda ignored most of it. She said healing isn't a performance. Eventually, she and Kirk had the conversation everyone expected. No yelling. No accusations. Just honesty. Rasheeda said she didn't hate him. She said she loved who she thought he was. Kirk admitted he didn't know how to be the partner she deserved yet. They agreed on distance, not out of anger, but clarity. Bambi moved forward too. She focused on her own life, her own growth. She said being labeled messy taught her who to keep close. She stopped explaining herself to people committed to misunderstanding her. That freedom felt earned. The cast slowly adjusted to the new reality. Alliances shifted again. Conversations felt more cautious. The unspoken lesson lingered. Secrets don't stay buried forever. And when they surface, they change everything. Fans would debate the situation for years. Some still blamed Bambi. Some still blamed Rasheeda for staying too long. Others finally pointed the blame where it belonged. But the women involved stopped participating in the noise. They had moved on in different ways. In the end, there was no dramatic resolution. No perfect ending. Just growth, loss, and truth. The kind that doesn't fade when cameras turn off. The kind that forces people to look at themselves honestly. And what started as screenshots and confrontation became something deeper. A moment that exposed not just one man's behavior, but a culture of silence. A moment that reminded everyone watching that truth doesn't destroy lives. Lies do. Now it's your turn. After everything you just heard, every confrontation, every receipt, every silence that spoke louder than words, the biggest question is, what do you think? Because this story was never just about drama on a screen. It was about truth, accountability, loyalty, and the cost of staying quiet when something feels wrong. And if you made it this far, it means this story hit you somewhere deeper than entertainment. You watched emotions unravel in real time. You saw alliances shift, masks fall, and hard choices get made. Maybe you felt anger. Maybe you felt empathy. Maybe you felt conflicted, torn between different perspectives. That's exactly why your voice matters here. This isn't a one-sided story, and it was never meant to be. Everyone watching brings their own experiences, their own boundaries, their own deal breakers into how they see this situation. So ask yourself, if you were in that room, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent to keep the peace? Would you have spoken up knowing the backlash would be brutal? Would you have walked away sooner, or fought harder to fix what was broken? These are the questions that keep this conversation alive long after the episode ends. Scroll down and let it out. Comment with your honest opinion. Not what you think sounds right, but what you truly feel. Do you think the truth should always be exposed, no matter who gets hurt? Or do you believe some things should stay private, even when they involve betrayal? Do you think accountability was finally served, or do you feel like there are still unanswered questions hanging in the air? And let's talk about growth. Do you believe people can really change once patterns are exposed, or do you think exposure just reveals what was always there? Is separation a failure, or is it sometimes the bravest form of self-respect? Your perspective might be exactly what someone else reading the comments needs to see. If this story made you feel something, don't keep it to yourself. Hit the like button to let us know this kind of real, raw storytelling matters to you. It tells us you want more deep dives, more unfiltered drama, more moments that don't shy away from uncomfortable truths. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is your sign. Subscribe now so you don't miss what comes next, because stories like this don't end cleanly. There are always ripples, always consequences, always new revelations waiting to surface. By subscribing, you become part of a community that doesn't just watch the drama, but talks about what it means. Turn on notifications too, because the conversation doesn't stop here. When updates drop, when new angles emerge, when the fallout continues, you'll want to be the first to know. Staying in the loop means staying part of the discussion while it's happening, not catching up after the dust settles. Share this video with someone who loves reality drama, but also with someone who understands the deeper layers behind it. The friend who always sees the red flags first. The one who believes women should be heard. The one who knows silence can be just as damaging as lies. Sharing keeps the conversation growing beyond this space. And remember, stories like this aren't just about pointing fingers. They're about reflection. They challenge us to look at our own boundaries, our own relationships, our own willingness to speak up or stay quiet. If this video made you question something in your own life, that's not an accident. That's the power of truth being spoken out loud. Before you go, drop one last thought in the comments. One sentence that sums up how this story made you feel. Angry, relieved, validated, disappointed, inspired, whatever it is, let it be real. Because real voices are what keep stories like this alive. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for being part of this space. Until the next story unfolds, stay curious, stay honest, and never ignore what your instincts are trying to tell you.